All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Keyan. I'm on the growth platform team here at Ramp, where we're tasked with effectively building all the tooling and the data foundations for our go-to-market folks, whether those be sales, marketing, and a bunch of other folks across the company that over time have come to leverage the tooling that our team builds. So let's go full screen here. Today, I'm largely going to talk about the growth MCP that we built for our salespeople, which actually unintentionally, in line with what Jay was saying, our goal is to enable everyone to build the perfect tool or workflow that suits what they want to do on go-to-market, in addition to the centralized tooling. So just taking a quick step back at how our team has come to where it is today. 4 or 5 years ago, we built what was called the outbound automation team, or OATS for short, which was an AI SDR before the team was really in vogue, before the term was really in vogue, and that consisted of automating the work of outbound SDRs. Over time, we inadvertently built a database of Ramp's entire TAM as a result of building out that data set. So we kept enriching it with technographics data, firmographics data from dozens of different sources, and we quickly realized that this had a lot of value for our human-led sales motions. And so we built a CDP app, which is effectively an audience builder where anyone can go in, pull an audience from that database for whatever purpose it is that they have on go-to-market. That quickly showed us that we stand to gain a lot here from investing more and more resources in building tooling for our sellers, which brought us to Ramp Revenue. You may have seen some screenshots of it online, but effectively what it is a one-stop shop where you can get a view of your book of business, whether you're a pre-sales or post-sales person, what signals are happening within that book of business, meeting prep. So what do you need to know for every meeting that you've got coming up today, post-call follow-ups, all these different processes are automated. These are some screenshots, which I'll do a quick zoom in on so that you can take a quick look. But effectively, the idea is you log in here in the morning as, say, an SDR. You see all the prospects that you should be focusing on, an explanation of why you should be focusing on every single one of those. And that's what you've got here, a little AI copywriter. And on the right-hand side, what you have is a chronological view of all the intent signals happening on your account. So that's what you get when you click into those. But this is like this one-size-fits-all solution, which is great, and it is what we intend to be like a state-of-the-art solution for all of our salespeople, but it can only really contain what our singular team can build for the sales folks. And it doesn't take advantage of the horsepower of 300-400 salespeople who are in this building every day and who are in Claude Code or in Codex building tooling of their own. So how do we enable all of them? That's where the MCP comes into play. So we built a growth MCP, and the idea here is that we want to empower everyone to build their own tooling and then bring those learnings back into the centralized solution as well, so that we can then disseminate the best of the best from what everyone in the field is actually building. So where does the growth MCPs fit? It sits between the clients and the GTM systems, whether that be our CRM or outreach tool, whatever it may be. And what's really unique about it is it enables is it inherits the auth and controls that we know our salespeople should have and what permissions they should have, so that everyone can only do what they're allowed to do, only view what they're allowed to view through their AI client, but do so in a way where they're enabled to do what they could do in Ramp Revenue, but from the AI interface. So these are some examples of the tools that the Growth MCP contains related to intent signals, getting meeting briefs, getting an overview of the account that you're about to talk to, enrolling prospects into a sequence or writing an email, whatever it may be. But I'll walk through some specific examples. But the idea is that every single one of these has a description. There are at this point 79 tools. We're adding more every single day based on what we're learning from the field and what they all need. And what it creates is this really cool loop where we effectively have this flywheel that's developed where we build Ramp Revenue, and then the Growth MCP has all the tools that Ramp Revenue actually leverages through API. In this case, we enable everyone to access those via the MCP, and reps build their own workflows. That can be in the form of, again, the AI via the AI client. It can also be in the form of web apps. We have an internal platform called Ramplify where anyone can develop a web app of their own, deploy it purely internally, and they can share that with their teammates. And then we look at the data at that in those web apps, in those clients, and so forth. See, okay, what is leading to outlier outcomes, to very successful performance from the go-to-market folks? take the learnings of the best and bring it back into ramp revenue, and this loop keeps repeating, and the centralized application becomes better and better over time. So this has been like a really cool and frankly not something that I think we necessarily knew would happen in the beginning, but we really try to AI pill the entire company, and it's yielded some really exciting results. Some common use cases. These are the similar things that you will see in the Ramp Revenue app itself, where folks are self-serving it. Again, it could be in the client, it could be on the web, wherever it may be. For example, someone just had a call with a customer called Acme, or a prospect in this case, asks, what was discussed on the call, how should the CRM be updated. These are fairly manual tasks that are painful for AEs who have back-to-back calls every single day to be doing. Immediately, the agent knows what fields to update, gets approval from the rep, and moves on. Or for example, if I'm in prospection mode and I want to figure out who within my book of business I should be reaching out to today, I will ask the agent exactly that, who is exhibiting intent signals in my book. It will tell me who, it will tell me why. I can go dig deeper, go back and forth here. And again, we can start to learn, and we store these, the intent underlying the questions that are being asked to the agent to figure out, what are the clusters of activities that are happening here. Full prospect brief, and these, I will caveat, are actually much shortened versions from what you would actually see when using the MCP for the purposes of this presentation, but meeting brief as well, one of the other functionalities that you can get out of this. And again, it all applies to pre-sales all the way through pro-sales. When we started, we exclusively started with SDRs and AEs. As we saw a ton of ROI there, we expanded into post-sales, and I would say now we're getting just as much value from enabling our customer success and account managers with similar tools. So again, 2 more examples here, and then I'll wrap up. But you can create opportunities, do some web research, and then map it to our CRM to see, for example, who within a VC portfolio of a VC who you're about to meet is already on Ramp and who isn't, so that you can try to get them to introduce you to their portfolio companies. Some key learnings here. The auth has been a big part of it, and like what this has really enabled us to do is like not let everyone across the company willy-nilly go into the CRM and just make updates across the board, but do so in a safe, controlled manner. The tool descriptions have been a huge unlock to just make sure that the right tools are being accessed at the right time, and logging the agent's rationale. So every time an agent is making a tool call to the MCP, the agent also has to write a rationale for why that tool is being called. And then we cluster all that information, and that's a key part of that loop I was mentioning earlier, where we then figure out what are folks using it for, take that learning and bring it to the centralized tooling. And the last point I'll make here is, historically in product management, user research is done by shadowing folks, by asking them questions of what it is that they do day to day. This is really a much higher level fidelity version of that. Excuse me. It's a much higher fidelity version of that because you're effectively just letting the user show you, okay, what are gaps in your existing tooling that it's not doing for them, and they just end up doing it themselves. And they're really, especially with salespeople, like salespeople are the most rational users on earth because there's a direct correlation between the output of their work and their paycheck. And so they are very heavily incentivized to use this tooling, build what is going to be most useful for them, and they're really not going to waste time on building things that just look cool. But yeah, it's been a really fun ride. Continuing to add tools by the day, continuing to improve ramp revenue by the day, to the extent that you have ideas for what we should be building next or things that you think we'd benefit from. We're hiring, we're looking for customers, we're looking for partners at all times. Definitely feel free to reach out, and I'll be sticking around in the reception afterwards as well. Thank you very much. Do we have time for questions? Yeah. Cool.
What is it? I noticed that you're doing transcript from Gong. What do you feel like you can not do yet that you can do with Gong? That makes sense. Like, what can you not do with your MCP yet that you're still relying on Gong?
So Gong, for example, we use that to get the call transcripts, right? So all of the historical call transcripts are fetched via Gong, which we dump into our Snowflake warehouse, and we can also access directly as well. So it's really for the underlying data. Yeah.
Are there tools that you decided to build on your own that now you're looking at procuring something external or vice versa?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like we definitely never want to build things purely for the sake of building internally, and for every build versus buy decision, it's like we will only build internally if it's going to give us some sort of competitive advantage. Otherwise, there's no, rationale for using internal resources on that. Are there tools that we? I think because we've taken such a in-house approach to the majority of our tooling, I don't think there's anything that we necessarily like procured externally that today we're trying to like bring in-house. There probably are some examples, but a lot of our stack is ultimately in-house, and so we really from the beginning have been taking the approach of like, what can we do ourselves? Um, and on the flip side, but yeah, I mean there are some third-party softwares who probably shouldn't name, but who we will eventually aim to bring in-house. On the flip side, I think we there none of the things that we have built in-house do I think we would bring third-party tools in for. Yeah. Yep.
Great presentation, Kian. My name is Cherry Gartwa. I am wondering kind of a two-sided question. What percentage of your reps are actually DIYing? Like, what's the amount that are actually like truly building?
Yeah.
And then two, what's the role with CRM and all this?
Yeah. So the vast majority are. It's about the extent of the DIYing. So like, if you consider just querying in Claude, for example, every day, that's the vast majority. What percentage are building web apps? That's a smaller number, but um, it's really like a spectrum more than like a discrete number that I could give you. The CRM still plays a very important role. It's very much a system of record for a number of different things, and it also serves as our integration layer into a bunch of third-party apps like our routing application, Gong, whatever it may be, and connecting the data from those apps to the relevant accounts, opportunities, and so forth. Yep.
Two questions. Thank you for the great talk. One is, when you're thinking about a shared tool layer, do you think about that like cross-functionally as well? I'd imagine that there's data science and other teams building really good tools that are useful for go-to-market. Do they have their own MCP? Like, how do you think about this on a broader level than just go-to-market?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Like, for all those sort of atomic tool calls, how do you think about what goes in the MCP versus what gets kind of put into a deterministic workflow and just turned on rather than called ad hoc?
Yeah. So on the first piece, in terms of the data science piece, we operate as a full-fledged PDD pod. So we've got product engineering, data, and design on our team, and so we have data scientists directly embedded into our team, and it's really all in one. Now the data team builds workflows and so forth for a bunch of other things as well, which they serve different purposes. But yeah, I don't know if that answers that part of the question. And could you repeat the second part, please?
The second one is, how do you think about what gets turned into a deterministic workflow versus what goes in the MCP to just be called ad hoc?
Yeah, it's really it anything that we implement into our centralized tooling that are accessed via APIs in say Ramp Revenue also gets an MCP tool call. So it's fairly comprehensive in that regard. So like to the extent that we can imagine someone may want to use it via an AI client, we will make it available as long as they have the right permissions to do so. Yep, in the back.
How do you evaluate the system?
Evaluate what? Sorry.
How do you evaluate the system?
Evaluate the system. I think that the answer to that is like very different for every single part within it. Like whether it's like, for example, the quality of copy that it's writing or the quality of the, let's say the prospection data or whatever it may be. So we have different, I suppose, parameters for every single one of those. Is there a specific part of the system you were wondering about? Cool.
Last question.
Yeah, this is the last question here.
All right, right there.
How did you guys think about going about evaluating the outputs for subjective things like copy as opposed to something like right email, wrong?
Yeah, great question. So for example, we have an AI copywriter which we've propagated across our entire SDR team, and in the beginning we had holdout groups when we initially rolled it out in beta to see how do SDRs perform if they do versus don't have access to the tool. But also over time, there are a lot of folks who are natural holdouts, I suppose you could call them, who don't use the copywriter for whatever reason, and we are able to A/B test in that manner. Now, there's obviously some self-selection there, so what we will do is like filter it down to an audience where it's like a like-for-like audience of contacts who are being reached out to, see how the copywriter does versus like human written copy, or like not necessarily human written, but maybe they go into an AI client and do something of their own. Yeah.
Awesome. Why did you have one really fast one?
Sure. Over there.
So I'm on the Bloody IT Met owner, and we follow like the centralized model largely in part because we want to keep reps more focused on like the calling. And we have like they can go a little bit cowboy with like cloud code. I was wondering what drove the decision to move you to the decentralized model realm.
Yeah, so I will say that we very much are still doing both. Like Ramp Revenue has a ton of usage. I think every SDR, probably 99% of them log into Ramp Revenue every week, if not every day. It's got a very high usage, and this is more so for like building more bespoke workflows. What drove the desire to build out the MCP? One is that folks were starting to use Claude on their own, and we're running into roadblocks of like, oh, I want to take this action, that action, I can't. And we don't want to block their creativity, block their output, and so forth. And it goes back to the point earlier of like, they're rational. So if like they're doing this day in, day out, it's ultimately for their paycheck, but also for the best of the company, because we also want them to maximize revenue. And so it makes sense for us too. Cool. Thank you, everyone.